Greetings, vloggers, bloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty. It's been a week for us all, and it's taught me some things in life. And if you've read my blog this past week and the past e-blast, I appreciate you for listening. First, I want to mention today we're going to talk about autism and addiction. Before we do, make sure if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, to please be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video at the end, please be sure to hit a thumbs up. And if you want to hear more, be sure to tap the notification bell so you can be notified when a new video hits, usually every week. So today, it's autism and addiction. How have we got to this point? How have we learned? How have I learned? Why am I talking about this? I'm not addicted to drugs and alcohol, first and foremost. So I don't carry that kind of experience that, one would expect. But having those feelings of addiction is a different thing. It's like an impulsivity of sorts. You want to have something, you just got to have something, and you'll do anything and everything you can to make sure that you have it and that it's in your possession and that it helps you feel good or helps you calm or something like that. So I don't know if many of you have been following my blogs and vlogs, but over the past few years, I'd say about the last 2 decades, I've been really addicted to soda, and it's been a problem for me. I would drink somewhere between 2 and 4 liters a day. It was a challenge because that's all I wanted, and at times when I really wanted it, when I thought I needed it, I would do anything to damage any person in any way or throw a hissy fit to get what I wanted. And you would say, well, that's a meltdown, but it's not a meltdown. It's not because I'm having sensory overload or I'm having too much environmental factors. It's because I want something and I don't. It's being a spoiled little brat, which I want to signify is a big difference. There's two big, we sometimes correlate with having an autistic go into a meltdown as a way of getting what they want. And yeah, sometimes things weren't, there were times in my life as being autistic that there were things that weren't healthy for me or they were overwhelming. But these are the times more specifically when I wanted this drink or I wanted a beverage or something that I thought was fulfilling. So, last week I had a wake up call that, I needed to ditch the caffeinated products. And caffeine is just as much as a sugar, as a heroin. It's just as much as anything, although I can't speak as for a substance, it is as much as a substance because you crave it, you want it, and it can be addictive just as much as food or any other kind of addiction that you have. So I went and searched autism and addiction today. This morning when doing some research online, and I came across a study done in 2018 that focused primarily on it was based off of 17 different scholarly articles. And most of these individuals were on the higher end of the spectrum, or they were more able to take care of themselves. They're more visibly able, and they were able to mask. Most of them had an IQ over 100. I know in 1991 or 92, I had an IQ over 92. So you figure I've grown some intelligence, so I would fit into that category. But what they found in the study was that autistics are 2 times likely to become addicted to a substance, whether drugs, alcohol, caffeine, whatever, you name it. If you have that correlated with ADHD, attention hyperactivity deficit disorder, which many do, that doubles the chance. So it makes it higher, puts it in a higher threshold. So because you want that feeling, want that rush. There's a lot of correlation between alcohol and not so much alcohol, any addiction, and autism, especially in those who have been diagnosed with Asperger's, such as myself, or high functioning autism. More of that end of the world spectrum. Of course, we know autism is a spectrum disorder. Um, it sometimes feels like it's a repetitive. They also found out in this study is that it's repetitive behavior. So needing that for me, it was needing that drink, needing to needing to caffeinate, needing to be on that high sort of sports. It's not even a really high thing. It's just I had to feel good. I had to feel amped up. And when I was doing that, I was realizing that it wasn't good for me. It wasn't healthy. And ultimately it causes meltdowns if not controlled, or too many environmental factors mixed in. It doesn't it diminishes my chance of bringing myself back to reality. So I realized, that I did have an addiction. I always kind of knew, but it was like I was in denial, and I kept living in denial for many years. And now, as I know, it's 2021, and I'm fresh into it, of realizing that I'm in an addict to soda, but I'm realizing, that it's as much as any other drug or substance. Um, it helps cope with problems. I think that's a big thing too, that the study found out. I think it helps me cope with, being part of a social club or being part of something, because everybody else is doing it, so why can't I? And that's a hard thing to accept sometimes, realizing that, you want to do it, but it's kind of hard to accept and, say, okay, well, everybody else is doing it, but I can't because it's not good for me. It's not healthy. I'm not going to be a good person at the end of this. And, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that caffeine works differently in everyone. Specifically for me, it does not work well for me. I've known this as a young child. Always had it in my brain that it didn't work well. Um, I did it as sort of a denial because I wanted to prove my parents something, just like I did with the medicine a few weeks ago, and finally settled that medicine is beneficial too, just as much as not having caffeine is beneficial. So it doubles the risk, of having autism. It sort of doubles the risk, of if you get into the substances that cause addiction. And I feel that way. That's why I've never touched an energy drink in my life. I'm old enough that I was around before energy drinks came into play. So I never had one because I knew if I had one, I'd be completely out of control. There's a lot of issues also with impulsive behaviors, and they help amplify them. And I've noticed since not being on caffeine for the past 6 days, that 6 or 7 days, that those behaviors have just diminished. And I don't know if it's because of being on a detox, having a headache, or whatever. Those behaviors have them that they didn't those impulsive behaviors have diminished, and that's probably a good thing in a way. And of course, if you are in addiction and you do seek out help, you go to detox, and then eventually if you go to rehab, group therapies are a big component of that model. And some having the ability as an autistic to go into group therapies, is kind of hard because you're afraid to open up, unless it takes you time to open up, takes you time to be who you are. And, being put in that predicament can be a challenge. So to providers in rehabs and, clinics where group therapy is performed has to realize, that autistics kind of they need to know about the autism, if that's if that's a diagnosis the individual has, so that they can seek the proper knowledge and care for them, and make sure that aid them in getting help if they need it. I mean, granted, there's some who's again, autism is a spectrum disorder. It took me a long time to grow to be who I was, so that was a big thing. But as if you were asking me that question 17 or 18 years ago, I wouldn't even know if that would be even a thing. And because everybody else is drinking it, it's a social addiction. I mean, because addictions can be social. Especially for soda, that was really hard. to realize that, it's hard for me to realize that, it's on the shelves of every store you walk in. You can't walk through a store and you can't have one because it's going to be that way. But it took me a long time to accept that, and I think I've finally accepted that. So it's just a give and take. If I have to buy the extra fizzy stuff so that I can better cope with life and better manage my mood and prevent the risk of going into meltdown, then I have to do that, and that's part of my acceptance. That I have an addiction to caffeine, and I realize that I have to do what's best for me. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening to my story there, real quick, about autism and addiction. Like I said, like, follow, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. As always, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dustin's Dynasty, Pinterest and TikTok at Dustin's Dynasty ASD. I'm also on many streaming platforms for our weekly podcast. I do 4 podcasts a week on Spotify and many other streaming platforms, and I'm on the internet at www.dustinsdynastyusa.com. I want to thank you for listening and have a good week.